in New York. She has to commute 2 hours each way, and she's 43 years old and healthy.
Yeah.
All right.
And commute by public transport?
By subway and bus. Okay.
Yeah.
What would I said she's 43. It is a very big school. There are 110 kids, 1,000, what am I saying? 1,100 kids in that school. What are the risk factors for going in to do that work?
Yeah. So I think it depends on a lot of things. So I guess let's take it as two separate issues: public transportation and the school itself. So the school itself, it depends on what they do, what measures they put into place. So let's say you are taking the most stringent measures you could. So you are requiring all kids to be masked. All teachers are going to wear a mask, or a face shield, or some combination. You're going to do temperature checks at the beginning of the day. And there are different ways of doing temperature checks. You can have, how are you going to temperature check 1,000 kids walking into the school? I mean, like, the practicality of that, they have these, screeners that are contactless, but that's not easy. Now you can have people check at home and sign into an app and say, I checked, but yeah, the phenomena of people sending their kids to school sick, which we all know happens. I know it happens because I see them in my office in preschool. Oh yeah, she had a fever last night, but she was fine this morning, so I sent her in. And then I got the call at 11 that she has a fever and you need to come pick her up. Like, that has to end. And people can't send their kids to school sick, and I don't know how we can make that happen. But so let's say you're having temperature checks, you're having mask wearing, you're having smaller class size. Maybe you're having no lunch period, no gym, no moving around. I think you could reduce the risk to a point where, if you're a young, healthy person and you're going to wear a mask all day, it might not be unreasonable. But it's really hard to see how you're going to teach in a mask all day. When I wear an N95 mask, I'm exhausted by the end of the day. I mean, you definitely don't get as much oxygen in the mask, the N95s that really seal you from coronavirus. So, I just want to make one more point about masks. So most people are talking about wearing either a cloth mask or a surgical mask, not an N95 respirator. So cloth and surgical masks don't filter all the virus that would come at you. Surgical masks do a reasonable job, but not a perfect job, and cloth masks don't do a great job. But they're very good at what we call source control. So if somebody else is wearing them, they're very good at preventing that person's droplets and aerosols from getting to you. So if two people are wearing them and they're 6 feet apart, that's pretty good at preventing transmission of virus. But then at some point, you're going to have to take your mask off to have a drink of water or to eat something, or, so like, I don't really have a great answer to that question. And that's not even looking at public transportation, which is, the same thing. So what are they going to do on the train? How are they going to limit the number of people that can sit on the train? So, if you limit the number of people and everyone's wearing a mask, and your ride isn't that long, it might not be a very high risk. It's not no risk. I think an airplane is probably worse. But again, I think we'll have.
I'm going to pause you there, because the airplane question, is one that comes up.
Yes.
Where do you fall on airplanes?
I'm more concerned about airplanes. I think I guess I just don't trust that. Maybe a short plane ride, again, 2-3 hours, if you could reliably believe that everyone on the plane is going to keep their mask on for the whole time, it would be safer. relatively safe. But on a long flight, people are going to have to take their masks off to drink, to eat, whatever. Even on a short flight, not necessarily reliable. So again, it's a risk. Like I was telling Adrian, my son is in college in California, and he was home and he wanted to go back. And I let him go back. He took a 5-hour flight, 6-hour flight to California. He wore a mask the whole time. I mean, he probably took a drink of water or something on the plane. Maybe not everyone on the plane wore a mask, but he's 20 and he's healthy. And I felt like for the reasons that he wanted to go back, the risk benefit was fine for him to go back and be on a plane. I wouldn't get on a plane right now. My sister wanted to take her family down to Florida. I was like, are you kidding me? Are you out of your mind? Find something else to do. Yeah, so I'm not really thrilled about plane rides unless there's a real reason. If you have to go and see a relative who may not be around for much longer, or there's some real emergency. Sure, like risk benefit. You could also argue we haven't heard. I mean, there was just something that came out about 500 Delta employees have had coronavirus, and 10 have died. But we haven't heard a ton about outbreaks where planes have been the source. And they do filter the air, and the air that gets reused does go through some kind of a HEPA filter. So so I don't want to just totally say no to planes, but to me, planes are just long enough and a close enough space, and with people not necessarily wearing their masks and complying.
So Aviva, what I hear you saying, and I think people, the questions that are popping in, is everything is a risk-benefit analysis, and you really have to be intentional and thinking about it. Beryl said subways are crowded. Well, maybe, but they may not be so crowded these days. But what about simpler things?
They were renting still crowded yesterday or Friday when I was on a subway.
You were on the subway. I can't believe it, Beryl. You're a stronger woman than I am. Yeah.
My doctor's in the city. I have to get there somehow.
Right.
3 months ago, they were a little more crowded after we were locked down, but it was still pretty crowded, both in and out.
The other thing that I have to say, and this
is the doctor. Yeah.
There are so many. It's such a complex topic, which is maybe why I find it so fascinating. Because you also have to look at the rates in your area. And I do think, like, New Yorkers and Northern New Jersey, we went through hell in March and April. But our test positivity rates, which is kind of what I'm looking at, are below 2%. And that's really pretty good. And I get the hospitals that I'm on staff, they send me daily numbers of the number of patients that they're admitting from their ER for COVID, the number of patients they have on their floor, the number in the ICU, the number ventilated and stuff like that. And, there was this huge peak, and now they're very low. I mean, they're admitting just a handful of patients a day, and it's been stable for a few weeks now. One of the smaller hospitals maybe will admit 2, 5, 4, 2. They've had a couple of days of 0. I haven't seen it go up at all, which to me is just very reassuring. So, on the other hand, you do have to take that into consideration. If you're living in a community where there's not a ton of disease, the risks are lower for doing any of these things.
Yeah. So what about the less risky, I think of renting a house? We're renting a house in 2 weeks. They clean it, we'll wipe it down.
Yeah.
Going swimming in someone's pool, I have a question on that. What does those look like?
So the good news is I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do that's less risky. So clearly, outdoors is the place to be. So like we've known this, we knew this from some of the data from China that they had, and again, like for as much as you believe the data from China, that they had almost no cases, right? They just had that one case of outdoor transmission, but the rest of all the cases, and they had amazing contact tracing, were all indoor transmission. And the outdoor transmission was unmasked and, like a long encounter. So, and I mean, the number of cases, we haven't seen a lot of cases from protests in the Northeast, at least around here. And yes, people were wearing masks, but not everyone was wearing masks. And people were definitely not 6 feet apart. And people were shouting. And, so it was a big question whether we were going to see cases. And we haven't seen a big uptick in cases, which to me is very reassuring for the idea that it's pretty hard, or it's much harder to catch outside. So, any kind of outdoor interaction is great. I regularly get together with people outside. I set up chairs. Honestly, when I started doing this in May, our chairs were probably about 20 feet apart, and then they were 15 feet apart. And I just saw a bunch of people this afternoon. I think our chairs were about 10 feet apart. We sat around for 2 hours, and I don't consider that a big risk. I think it's a worthwhile risk. I went to pools. Let me mention pools. So we're pretty sure this virus can't be transmitted in chlorinated water. It's not such a hardy virus. It's pretty easy to kill on surfaces, like you can wipe it down and you'll kill it pretty easily. And so you can swim in someone else's pool. Yes, that's fine. The risk would be if you get too near them outside of the pool, so that's why all these beach clubs, which a lot of them are reopening, are, trying to come up with some ways of keeping people apart when they're outside of the pool. I can tell you, I'm letting my husband play pickleball.
I don't even know what that is, but
you know what pickleball is? No one? Okay. It's kind of like tennis, but with a paddle, and it's on a smaller court. So it's outdoors. Tennis is fine. It's outdoors, but you're not quite as far from other people because it's played in pairs. But you're not within 6 feet of people most of the time. If you're briefly within 6 feet, the risk is very, very low. Oh, and I went to my first outdoor Zumba class today where, I was definitely 8 feet, and I think exercise, you're breathing more, so you could be breathing out more. But I think, again, risk benefit for me, I was like, I just don't think the risk is that great when you're outdoors and you're far apart. So I think that's where we should be like concentrating on getting together with people, because we need to see people. Like kids need to see their friends. Somebody said, is it okay to see? Oh, I missed that. To start seeing.
I'll get that one for you. Yeah. Basically, the question is it all right to start seeing other families outdoors? And they have little ones under 5. And she's saying, I think she's assuming their little ones won't wear a mask.
Right. Okay, so first of all, I think if you're going to be 10, 12 feet apart from people, you don't need to wear a mask. I can tell you, when I get together with my friends, I don't wear a mask. I just think there's, especially not 6 feet, because there may be some transmission at 6 feet, but 12 feet apart, there's really, the risk for transmission is very, very low. I mean, if you want to wear a mask, I'm never going to tell anyone not to wear a mask. But to me, masking outdoors is for when you're near people. And then, so in terms of the kids, I don't mind if the kids don't wear masks, but the thing is, are you going to be able to keep your 5-year-old 6 feet apart from their 5-year-old friend, right? And the answer is most likely no. So then it's a question of, how comfortable are you with this family? What are their risk factors? And everyone is talking about enlarging their bubble. What are your risk factors? Are you living with your 96-year-old grandmother? Are you, basically young-ish and healthy? And, at this point, again, we're going to be, all indications are that we're going to be dealing with this virus for a long time, at least a year, 18 months, something like that. So, if you want to help your kids feel less crazy, now would kind of be the time to let them go and spend time with friends in some form, because rates in New Jersey are low and they can do this outside. So
let me see if I can sort of repeat what you're saying. So what you're saying is the summertime outside is the least risky time, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
What about helping children learn how to wear masks when they want to see their friends? I mean, it is possible.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think, you can get used to a lot of things that initially seem uncomfortable to you. And especially, cloth masks can be fun for kids. You can get them in kid sizes. You can do, talk about superheroes wearing masks. You can get their favorite characters on a mask. You can start, if they're a kid with sensory issues and they really hate it, you can start with 5 minutes at a time. Let's practice. We'll do 5 minutes today. We'll set a timer. Then we'll do 10 minutes. Then we'll do 15 minutes so that they get used to it gradually. I personally think surgical masks are so much more comfortable than cloth masks.
Yep.
They're much thinner. They work in a different way. So they don't have to be as thick because they have like an electrostatic charge. That is how they stop the viral particles from coming through. But I don't think you can find surgical masks that will fit really little kids, although you can like twist the ears, the loops to fit on the ears. So again, like if you have an older kid or, even a school age kid who doesn't like the cloth mask, you might try a surgical mask because those are lighter.
I've gotten very attached to my surgical masks, and I don't have to smile at people anymore. This is a whole new thing. You can hide out behind your mask.
And when you're hiking, there are like you're not worried about inhaling bugs.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Ayla had a question. Is it safe for kids to wear surgical masks for a day in school?
Yes, I think so. So, it's not recommended for kids under 2 at all. I wouldn't recommend wearing one while asleep, so napping or anything like that.
Right.
But remember that, and I'm sure, again, I don't know how much of this stuff is repetition, but many surgeons have pointed out that they are in the operating room for, many, many hours, sometimes 10, 12-hour surgeries, and they're wearing a mask the whole time and able to function and breathe. And they're not, because there's been all kinds of crazy stuff about like you're going to be breathing in your carbon dioxide and it's going to affect your brain function and you're going to die. And no, that's not true. I don't think it's unsafe.
That's encouraging that the surgeon isn't affecting their brain function.
Right. You're glad about that.
Right. So, so masks, hand washing.
Yep.
What else? If you're going to send your kid to school. Oh, I have one. Can we hug my mom? Wait. Let me get that whole one for you. I was going to go right there. She's really desperate. We're all healthy, but she's 72, in remission from cancer.
So I think the first thing is, my impression is that remission from cancer is not a huge risk factor. Active cancer is, but if you had cancer, a year ago and you were treated and you've recovered, you're not currently receiving chemotherapy, that itself is not a big risk factor. Being 72 is a risk factor.
What if you're 72 and think you're 24?
Oh, no, that's important. That's key. Oh, 15 years remission. I see that. Yeah. Okay. So that I wouldn't be worried about that. But, the truth is there are 72-year-olds with, heart disease and COPD and hypertension and stuff like that. And then there are 72-year-olds who run marathons. So I think that makes a difference. I think your overall health status is important. So again, it's like risk benefit. Like, and the New York Times had that article about, how to hug someone with coronavirus. So, I think if you're both masked and you're outside and it's a brief hug, and especially the Times article pointed out, if a kid is shorter, so their face isn't at the same level, I mean, the risk is probably not that great. Like everything we do every day has a risk. We get in a car and drive and that has a risk. And, we walk across the street looking at our phones and that has a risk. And so, I think like, again, it's a personal decision, but I think if my mom were 72 and wanted to hug my I don't have a 5-year-old, but my little kid, I would be fine with that. I would have them both wear a mask and do it outside.
Fair enough.
Not hug for the next like 18 months.
Too hard.
Yeah.
Monique says thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have time for another question or so. Any other questions? You can just unmute yourself if you want to say it.
Me.
Linda, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm really concerned for Naz and for my kids who are moving out to New Jersey, work in the city. If it is as risky to get on public transportation, whether it's New Jersey Transit and then the subway or the bus, once you're in the city, how do they all cope with the fact that they have to earn money and they feel at risk taking public transportation? I mean, they've been working remotely all these months, and they can't afford to quit.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying, but it does present a conflict.
Yeah. I know, and I hear you, and I think it's like, how do we be real about this? Because we have to work, and our jobs require us to be at work at a certain point. So I think that if the first thing is, you could have 2 masks. You could have an N95. I mean, N95 masks are really good at preventing the transmission of this disease. So if you got, and you know, if you wear them in a hospital, you get fit tested to make sure there are no leaks. But let's say you had an N95 and you wore that on the subway. You can't wear that all day. I mean, doctors do, but it's super uncomfortable. But you could wear that for your public transport part of the day, and then maybe switch into a surgical mask when you're at work. And again, we may have more data. Like maybe if everyone is masked on New Jersey Transit, we're not going to see outbreaks on it. And we just don't know that yet. It's quite possible that maybe public transportation with everyone wearing a mask, because you've got source protection from the people wearing it, and then you're also wearing a mask, is not a big risk factor. We just don't know that yet, but we might know that in a couple months. So I think if you want it to be as safe as possible, get yourself the best mask you can and wear that for the risky part of your trip.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask the last question somebody asked me today. And then we're going to have to end. We could probably worry about this for many more hours. And I mean that seriously.
Yeah.
The big question, in a week, people are going to start going for haircuts. Are you going to wear a mask when you go for a haircut? And should your hairdresser wear a mask?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's an easy question. Yes. Everyone should wear a mask when they go to get their haircut. Why would you not? Like, it's so easy. First of all, I would not get my haircut if my hairdresser is not wearing a mask. And I know it's a little tricky because either you have to have something around your ears, or I've heard of people putting tape, like the kind of tape that you use for clothing, on the inside of a mask so that you can just tape it to your face. But I assume that they're all require you to wear a mask. And you know, there was that study, there was that case, it's not a study, I can't remember where, Minnesota or someplace out west, where there's 2 hairdressers who both worked with symptomatic COVID-19 and did the hair of like 150 people. Did anyone hear about this case? Oh, okay. This was all over the news a couple of weeks ago. So they found out that these 2 hairdressers, I don't remember where, Wisconsin, someplace like that, they were symptomatic. I don't know if they had fever or cough or whatever. Anyway, they ended up testing positive, and they had taken care of 150 clients whose hair they had done. Everyone wore masks. They both wore masks, and they required that their clients wore masks. So far, they haven't found any of them to have had COVID-19.
Wow.
Now, they haven't been able to test all of them. They've only been able to test about a third of them because many of them didn't want to be tested, and they can't force people to get tested. But of the people who agreed to get tested, which was, they said 49 people last I read, none of them tested positive. So, that's reassuring.
It's actually, Aviva, a little more about being inside and where there's a lot of turnover and a lot of people coming through. And I haven't done any of that yet. So it's just,
right. I think I think I'm gonna go get my haircut. So, I was like, I'm gonna get my haircut for the next year and a half. I'm gonna wear a mask. I know how many people. I've already talked to the hairdresser guy, and I know how many people are gonna be there. It's not gonna be crowded. I'm also going to the dentist, which again is a bigger risk in some ways because I'm not gonna obviously can't wear a mask when you're at the dentist, but I just feel like you gotta take care of your teeth. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the dentist. At restaurants, for me, I'm not gonna eat in a restaurant for a while. How are you gonna eat and wear the mask? That's not possible. So
if I may interrupt, I'm going to Bangs tomorrow, and they sent me a 3-page, not very large print of what you need to do and don't do.
Yeah.
Plus the fact I'm seeing the dentist at the end of July, and I have a 2-pager from them.
Yes.
And that I feel comfortable with, but no way under the sun am I going to a restaurant to eat.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense,
because here I know they're taking precautions.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I'm gonna end this because we are at time, but quick question. Are there supplements that increase immunity? Did you see that one, Moni?
Right. Good question. Excellent question. So the short answer is, we don't know. They haven't been studied. Vitamin D. Everyone talks about vitamin D. I could spend like 20 minutes talking about vitamin D, but if you're deficient, it certainly makes sense to take vitamin D. If you're not deficient, you want to take 1,000, 2,000 IUs a day of vitamin D. Knock yourself out. I'm taking vitamin D. I think vitamin D is maybe possibly good for a lot of things. Zinc. I think if I were to get sick, I would take zinc. It's not going to do any harm. It makes some people nauseous. Vitamin C, I'm not a huge believer in vitamin C. There are people taking mega doses of it. It's harmless. It's not going to do any harm to take a lot of vitamin C. And, eat healthy, be healthy, exercise. Exercise improves your immunity. We all know, eating lots of fruits and vegetables and not too much processed food, all that stuff.
So be healthy is what you're saying. Do what keeps you healthy. Aviva, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's hard to think about this. It's hard to listen to it. And we all have to do our own assessment and figure out we're going to live the next 18 months.
Yeah.
Right? So thank you so much. Let me just remind you all, next week, you are welcome to come, Aviva. It's going to be sexier. Next week, Stuart Green is going to be talking about criminalizing sex, a united liberal theory. He's a lawyer, and he's going to be talking about legal views of sexual criminal activity. So look at this. Nas is coming for that one. So with that, I want to say thank you again, Aviva, and great to see you all. Stay healthy, and we'll see you Tuesday. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Aviva.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
And
Thanks, sorry.
Adrian, can you shut it down?
I can shut it down? Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ooh. I want to leave.